Hi, I'm John with Roadkill Incorporated, where you can sell me your broken MacBook, you can buy a refurbished MacBook, you can ask me hardware repair questions, all sorts of stuff. Check that out at rdklinc.com. So anyway, today I want to talk about RAM. I want to offer a practical guide to upgrading RAM on MacBooks, specifically the 2006 to 2012 MacBooks, because these are the only MacBooks that you can upgrade the RAM on. In 2012, they came out with the Retina MacBook Pros, and the RAM is soldered on the board. So only from the first MacBook that came out in 2006 to 2012 can you upgrade the RAM. So this is actually kind of a definitive guide because they probably will not produce any more MacBooks with expandable RAM. So if you just need the hard data on what MacBooks take, this is it. I wanted to front load the video, so if this is all you need, then you don't have to listen to me ramble for 20 minutes. So yeah, so you've got the type of computer, you've got the years, you've got the max they can take, and what's in yellow here is basically what you want to search eBay or Amazon for, the specifics for the various computers. And yeah, keep in mind MacBooks have 2 memory slots, and so the RAM is usually divided between the 2 slots. So 16 gig would typically be 2 times 8 gig, 4 gig would typically be 2 times 2 gig, that sort of thing. So make sure when you buy memory somewhere that you're buying 2 modules and not just one. So I'll get into some concepts first. So what is the bus speed? So if you look at this slide, I mentioned 667, 1066, 1600. So what is a bus speed? Think of it as the superhighway of connectivity on the logic board. You know, the processor, the RAM, all the other components. It's the speed at which data travels on the logic board, kind of like a map of roads, if you think about it, like the speed limit of the data on the roads. And the thing is, bus speed and RAM speed must match. That's why this is important. You must have RAM, or at least one module of RAM that matches the bus speed. Otherwise, you're going to have problems that I'll get into. So DDR2 versus DDR3, what does that mean? If you look at this, you know, the earlier MacBooks take DDR2, later ones take DDR3. So there are a lot of technical differences between those two. I won't get into that. For practical purposes, since this is a practical guide, what it means is they are not physically compatible with each other. So DDR2 has the notch right there. DDR3 has the notch a little bit further in. So you can't take a DDR2 module and put it in a DDR3 machine or vice versa. They just won't physically go in there, which is nice. It helps in identifying the right RAM for a computer. However, between DDR2 machines, you can get the speeds mixed up, and it will go into the wrong machine. And then between DDR3 machines, you can get the speeds mixed up, and the module will go into the wrong machine because you're still within a DDR3 world here. So I'll talk about the problems that presents. So downclocking. What is downclocking? So 2 RAM modules of different speeds will downclock to the slower speed. It's the lowest common denominator concept. If there are 2 of them, it will slow down the system to the slower of the 2. So with RAM, one memory module must be the same speed RAM as the board's bus. If you don't have one module in there that's the same speed as the board's bus, you're going to have problems. And the thing is, downclocking to a speed slower than the bus speed will slow down your computer. You don't want to do that. If the lowest common denominator is slower than your board's bus, then it'll drag the overall speed of the whole system down below the computer's potential. And you don't want that. You want your machine to run at the top speed that it can, that it was designed to run. So in my examples here, here's a good example, a positive way to go. Let's say your board is 1066 megahertz. So you put in a 1066 megahertz module, which is good because it's the same speed as the board, and then you put in a 1600 megahertz module, a faster module. Okay, that's good. So what it does is it downclocks to the 1066, and your board speed is 1066. So you're good. You're running at the board's full potential, and you're able to utilize a faster memory module. Now, one thing with refurbishing is that there are sometimes you end up with a lot of RAM that is faster than you actually need for a computer, and you still want to use that RAM if you can because you already own it, you know. And this happens because there's just, for whatever reason, there's just more of a specific speed. So a faster speed will be cheaper RAM for whatever reason. So yeah, there are reasons that you would end up with a pile of 1333 or 1600 megahertz RAM. And so what I would do is, you know, put in a 4 gig module of this guy, and then a 1 gig module of this guy to downclock to the right speed, and then you're good. So here's a bad example. Here's what you don't want to do. Let's say you have a mid-2012 1600 megahertz. If you put in 1066 megahertz and a 1600, well, it will probably work, but you've dragged your bus down to 1066 megahertz and your computer will crawl, and you don't want to do that because this is a nice fast board, and you've just sort of disrupted its ability to function the way it should. So troubleshooting, just some common issues. So if you put some RAM in a computer and you power it on and you get a sleep light and a black screen, that can indicate a RAM speed problem. Now, a lot of recyclers, a lot of people out there will just take a piece of memory, and if it fits, they'll assume it should work in that machine. They'll hit power and they'll get a sleep light and a black screen, and they'll assume that maybe it's a bad computer. I get thousands of computers that were badly diagnosed. I get them, put the right RAM in, and hey, I've got a working machine. So very, very common. Also, if you power on and you get 3 beeps on a MacBook, that means there's a RAM problem. It could mean bad RAM, wrong speed, bad slot. Bad slot means defective board, by the way. So again, you could get a sleep light and black screen. You could get 3 beeps. These things are a little bit random as far as the symptoms you'll get. So in order to troubleshoot the quote-unquote bad slot situation, what you want to do is test the RAM slots one at a time. Boot with one slot populated, then boot with the other slot populated and the other empty, and try to identify a scenario in which the computer actually works. I should say you don't really want to give someone a computer with one slot empty because, you know, that is a bad board. It is a board problem, and the capacity of the board is not, you know, what it should be if it was a fully working board. So, you know, I don't sell machines in that situation. And you should, you know, let someone know if that's the kind of machine they're getting. But yeah, a lot of people think the slot is bad in that situation. It's actually the hardware behind the slot. It's not. You don't need to replace the slot. That's not going to help you. So what happens is the hardware behind the slot is bad, and so if the slot is populated, then that hardware becomes active and malfunctions, and that's what causes, you know, sometimes the 3 beeps or the sleep light situation. So now I'll just get into some of the specifics of the various computers. We'll start from the beginning, 2006. So yeah, 2006, Core Duo White 1181, the first MacBook, as well as the black MacBook. So pretty much all of the original 1181 White MacBooks take 667 megahertz DDR2. 6 gig max. At first they thought it was a 4 gig max, but then people did experimenting and figured out they could take 6 by using a 2 and a 4 gig module. Yeah, and then the Aluminum Pros, the 2006 to 2008 Aluminum Pros, all of the ones with silver keys are in this same category. Not to be confused with PowerBooks, aluminum PowerBooks, which look identical except they say PowerBook instead of MacBook. So anyway, original white MacBooks, Aluminum Pros, all take 667 megahertz DDR2. Now, this is the one exception to the white MacBooks. The mid-2009, the final A1181 white MacBook, the 2.13 version, 2.13 gigahertz version specifically, has an 800 megahertz bus, not 667. So, yeah, so what did I say about, and it's DDR2 as well. So what did I say about DDR2 and DDR3? Well, all DDR2 has the same form factor, the same slot. So it is possible to mix up the wrong speed RAM between this guy and the earlier white MacBooks. If you put 667 in this, you'll have a problem. If you put 800 in those, you'll probably have a problem. So that's the first case in which you need to be aware of that. So this is the biggest category of MacBooks, the ones that take 1066 megahertz DDR3. So we're moved up into DDR3 category. This is the biggest chunk of MacBooks that exist. So you've got the 2008 to 2010 Unibody Pros, the 2009 to 10 white unibody MacBook, the A1342. So this is not to be confused with the 1181. This is the 1342. It's called the polycarbonate white MacBook. It kind of has rounded edges. It's a newer variant than the earlier original MacBooks. So those are DDR3 as well. And then you have the 2008 Silver MacBook, which is this guy. Kind of an oddball machine. This is not a MacBook Pro. It's a MacBook. This just says MacBook right here, as opposed to MacBook Pro on these guys. Yeah, so kind of an odd machine. Also takes 1066 DDR3. So the 2008 to 09s take 8 gig max. Some of the earlier ones require a flash ROM update, so you might need to do a software update the ROM, and then it'll take 8 instead of 4. And then the 2010s, or a nice upgrade, a nice benefit of the 2010 is that they can take 16 gig max. So nice bump up from the year previous. So 2011, very easy, very simple. Bumped up to 1333 megahertz bus, and takes 16 gigs max up to 2x8. So you could do 2 or 2x4 or 2x8, and you're all good as long as you have at least one 1333 module. You could have a 1333 and a 1600. Again, don't go 1333 and 1067 or 1066 because you will slow this machine down. And then finally, this is the final Apple MacBook that has upgradable RAM. Everything above this is Retina and is soldered on the board. So the mid-2012 Unibody Pro, not to be confused with the mid-2012 Pro Retina. So 16 gig max, 2x8. And for the final MacBook with upgradable RAM, they bumped it up to 1600 megahertz. So nice fast bus. And again, you don't want anything but 1600 megahertz in here because slower RAM will downclock this machine and you won't get your full performance. So other resources, like if this didn't help you or you just want to be extra sure about what you're doing, you can look up your serial number at this Apple website, and it will tell you the year of your machine, for example, mid-2012. Then what you can do is go to everymac.com, which is an absolutely wonderful website, look up an index of MacBooks by year, and it'll give you all the MacBooks for that year. Identify your particular MacBook by processor speed and mid-2012 and MacBook Pro 13-inch, for example, and then it will give you the an entire list of specs and information for that particular machine. Go down to the RAM section. It'll tell you the max RAM. It'll tell you the bus speed, everything you could need to know. And with that information, you can go to eBay and Amazon and plug that in. If you don't want to do eBay and Amazon, a lot of people don't because it's a little tricky. There's higher and lower quality stuff. I suggest you buy, but buy your Mac, your RAM at macsales.com. otherwise known as otherworldcomputing.com. Really, really great place. You'll pay a little more, but you know it's high quality. You have a warranty, tech support. No, I don't work for them, but really good place. So anyway, that is it. I will give myself one more plug. Please check out rdklinc.com, roadkillincorporated.com. If you have any broken MacBooks you want to get rid of, I'll buy them. I'll sell you refurbished MacBooks. I sell lots of MacBooks. I'll answer hardware-related repair questions. If you have RAM questions, you can post questions there. All kinds of stuff. So anyway, I hope you found this useful, and thank you for watching.